Yeah.
Welcome back to Peak Speed Lab 164, where gravity and mass meet friction and the ramp decides who wins. All right, let's do this next episode here. We're going to talk about the instruments that I'll be used to measure every conceivable thing I'm able to when it comes to the vehicles themselves, the track layout, the geometry, etc. So this is strictly just going to be the tools, okay? First we have, let's start off with, we're going to start off with the infrared thermometer. Boom. Okay. So what this handy dandy thing will do, right, trigger, is it actually has a dial. You can see will tell us what the temperature is of the track. So I will be actually every time I run tests, I'll be checking the track temperature, right? Because this could make a difference. Okay, this infrared thermometer is by KT Thermo. I'm not endorsed or sponsored by any of these companies. This is just what I've gathered for this project. Okay, so that's this. So then we're going to go to the next measurement. This is boom a digital indoor hygrometer and thermometer, okay, by ThermoPro. I don't know if that shows up backwards. What we're using this for is we can measure the room temperature and the humidity, okay? So I will be tracking this in a very extensive file. Got a lot of metrics that we're going to be keeping track of, keeping very organized. Like I said, I'm going to do the heavy lifting for you. And as we get through more cars, it'll be interesting to see if some patterns emerge. Okay, so that's this. And yes, I am looking down because I'm reading my list. Right, we all have to have a list so I don't lose track. So the next thing I'm going to point out is we've got boom. A lot of you have seen this, I'm sure, especially if you work in anything with construction, that kind of thing. This is a laser distance meter. Okay. This is by Bosch, and it's the Blaze model. Okay, this will be using to measure track distances. When I set up ramps, I want to know what the height is of the base or the launch point, and anything else that needs to be measured. To that point, I also have a manual tape measure. This actually is a nice little clip-on it's got a little level on it, but I'm going to really be using this boom for a tape measure for when the digital level may be a little difficult to work with. So we have that. Okay. And as we go through this process, you'll kind of see a theme, right? It's this we're right now talking about more of the track, and some of this like temperature and humidity can affect the vehicles too. Okay, so what's the next bit of fun? We have the digital angle gauge by Wixie. Okay, so this is going to be used for measuring the angle of the slope of the ramp, and also to ensure if I've got any sort of variance in the track layout. I'm going to try to keep these tracks as straight as possible, but we know these are, with the materials that are used, there could be times where things are slightly off. So I want to get as close to level as possible and make sure that I have the correct angle for the ramps, because we'll be tracking that as well. And in addition to that digital angle gauge, I'm going to actually be using my cell phone. I have a bubble level app, if you will, on it as well. So sometimes that is easier to use than this. Sometimes this is easier to use than that. Just depends on how it goes. But the point is, I will always cross-reference and ensure the results and the instruments are calibrated, or the instruments are calibrated, right? All right. So what do we have next? We have a pocket scale. This one is by Fusion, and the nice thing about this one is there is a little weight in it right here, so that every time before I use it, I can calibrate the scale. Okay, I can calibrate the scale and ensure that we're getting the same results every time we run, or every time I measure these vehicles. The reason I have the scale is we do have vehicles. I'm not going to just say cars, because there could be SUVs, trucks, we know there's tune vehicles, there's whatever that have different weights to them. So I'm going to actually have like I think probably 4 categories or so of a weight range for the vehicles, and that's what they'll go into. And if anybody's interested in seeing the file, the workbook that I'm using, I'll be happy to send that out. Again, I'm just doing this for fun. I'm doing this to better understand the physics, see what vehicles run better, and we're going to do everything from lap times for drag laps to actual speed and distance. Okay, so the next thing, here's probably the most important. This right here, this is a Mac Daddy. I'm opening it now because this comes in a very nice case. Okay, calipers. This is Mitutoyo is the brand. This is digital caliber. Okay, digital caliper. Okay, so I will be using this tool to measure everything from wheelbase to tire width to all the metrics that can be measured on each of these vehicles. Okay, everything again is going to go into a spreadsheet. The last bit of, I don't know, kind of an interesting metric that I'm going to measure, I guess metric I'm going to measure, is that right? I don't know. Measurement I'm going to account for is what's called center of gravity. So we do know that with these cars, these weights can be distributed differently. So I have this really incredible drum pad from Hexwave, but the back is flat. So what I'm going to do for this process is using a leveler where I can the digital gauge or the bubble level. I'll put the cars on here, gradually tip it, and figure out what the center of gravity result is, and we're going to track that as well. Now, because this can be a little tricky, I'm going to do it the same way every time, which means I'm going to do, like, say 3 rounds and every time, and then take the average of that. Okay, that's it for the instruments. So some of the things to think about when we start running these races, I'm going to, or running these tests, I'll call them tests. I'm going to follow, I'm going to do a calibration. I'm going to find a good calibration car so that I know that it runs the same way every time, so that I can test track conditions after I do these measurements every time. I'm just going to measure the cars and all their components once. I will do the track, the geometry, the temperature, all of that stuff every time I run in tests, okay? So that way we can be consistent. I'm going to let these cars do 20 sample runs, not going to track their time or their speed or anything, just so the cars can get warmed up, the track can get warmed up, that kind of thing. And then I'm going to do 10 runs, and I'm going to take the average score. So whether it's, and this is for the speed, and this is for, let's say, the lap time and distance. Then once we get the average, I'm going to plug that into the spreadsheet as well. And then I'm going to continue to track the top 10 cars, and it is going to be an ongoing list. So I may have cars that get knocked off pretty quickly. I may have cars that last much longer. Regardless, it's going to happen. If a car gets knocked out because of the conditions of the track, this is where it can be a little tricky. I'm just going to have to say it is what it is, okay? When the cars, when we do these runs, okay, we want to make sure that everything is as fair as possible, but I'm not going to be able to get all the different conditions exactly the same every single time, but they will be close. We will have, when it comes to how we measure everything, that information will be exact, because that's not dependent on room temperature and humidity and that sort of thing. Okay, so this is where we're going, and for a treat down the road, I'm actually in the process of constructing. Don't tell anybody, because I don't know that anybody on YouTube's doing this yet. A 1/64 scale quarter-mile drag track. So that's going to be one of the tests I'm going to run to see what the speed is at the end of that quarter mile. And I've also kind of run some numbers to figure out How long of a drop should it be? What's the angle of that slope? How should the bend and the transition occur from the slope into the straight? And then how long that straight should be to the end where we hit that speed gate. Okay, so and we'll get into those items in another video. But that's where we are now. We are getting all of this set up. Yes, I'm looking around all the gear and the equipment that you can't see. I've got a whole bunch of vehicles here to my right that will do, in some cases, I'm going to do a video of each one before I do the run through. And we're also going to have probably some unboxing of vehicles that come through just for fun. And I'll try to think of some other fun things. If you have any ideas, obviously feel free to, chime in. I want this to be a fun, interactive, and there's the puppy dogs because we have coyotes out back. So I want this to be a fun experience for everybody. And in the meantime, y'all keep racing, enjoy the hobby, and let's see. Thank you, Daisy. She's one of the supervisors here, and let's see what we can do with the with what we're trying to build here in the Peak Speed Lab 164 scale testing. There we go, testing ground. Thank you, Daisy. All right, for that, I'm gonna sign off, and you guys have a great one. Thank you.